And I know that a number of you are here this morning because of my friend and colleague, Dick Klausner. Dick graduated from MBA in 1973. And I can say that one of my great achievements at MBA was hiring him in 1996. So this is his 20th year here at MBA. He teaches English. He works with our college counseling programs. He's coached soccer. In fact, he's coached our junior school soccer team, and they've just won their 13th HVAC championship in a row. And he works with a lot of service programs at school, but by far I think the greatest thing Dick does is that he is an amazing mentor to the boys. They sense this kind of very tangible care and trust that he builds with them. And as you know, schools are built on people, so are communities, and they're built by people who have this special gift. You know, in a cliche way, he's kind of a Peter Pan, but in a substantive way, he is that kind of character that makes a transformative difference in a school community. I'm very proud to introduce Dick Klausner to you.
Good morning, everybody. It must be tough to go from those beautiful voices to my raspy Southern drawl, but I was in chorus for 1 month here at MBA till, I can't remember who the guy was, the teacher was, but he told me it might not be in my best interest. When Mr. Joy asked me to speak about the importance of fathers, it was a little bit ironic, and I kind of looked at him askew. I said, do you know my history with fathers? Because I've had 4 fathers. And when I was typing this speech and I typed that in, actually the computer corrected me to F-O-R-E, and I was like, no, it's F-O-U-R. But my 4 fathers were, 3 of them were wonderful men. They were incredible. My first father, the way I discovered that my stepdad, the man that I call dad, Mr. Klausner, Howard Klausner, the way I found out that he wasn't my dad is I was in 2nd grade, and I've never been great about paying attention. And so suddenly I heard Mrs. Trice say, and like Dick Klausner, his dad's not his real dad. And that caught my ear. And I raised my hand. And I don't really remember much other than that, than being taken down to the office real quick and my family coming and getting me. And they took me home, and I pulled my stepdad, who from the rest of the speech will be my dad. I asked him just privately, I said, why did my first father leave? You know, I was 7 years old, and you know, he didn't know what to say. And so he said, really what it was is, your father didn't like your mother's cooking. And being a 7-year-old, I accepted it. No problem, that's cool, you know? But the only problem was, every time mom made liver or squash, I got nervous. Not that nervous, though. All right. But here's what I want to talk about today. Athena in the Odyssey, and I'll refer to her a couple times in this speech. Athena comes in the Odyssey, and Telemachus is sitting weeping, as he's been weeping for 20 years, really. And comes in and tells him, go find your father. Tells him, go find your father. Now, I tell you what, I'm 60 years old now. But most of my days, I don't remember that. And most of my days, I still see myself as a son. And I bet most of the men in this room have that same sense. I know the sons do, but still at 60, I still see myself as a son. Sometime when I look in the mirror, it reminds me that I'm not. But I tell you, I find myself still to this day still looking for approval from my father figures. And most of us have more than one father figure. For me, I'll be honest with you, I still need, when I come to school in the morning, for Mr. Tillman to tell me, you're doing a good job. I still need Mr. Joya to say, well done. Giles Cheever's the man I coach with. It means the world to me. He's the best soccer coach I've ever known in my life, and I've played for so many coaches and worked with him. He's the best coach I've ever known. And when he just tells me after a game, good job, that's the father figure that I need. Even Mr. Lanier, he was my first soccer coach. And he's not a man of many words, but he's a great man. And the other day when we won the HVAC championship, it meant the world to me, and if you know Mr. Lanier, you know this. He just walked up to me and did that bent arm, two-finger gesture and tapped me on the shoulder and then just walked away. But that meant the universe to me. It meant more than words ever could have. Now, my dad was a coach. He had a job at Vanderbilt doing research, but his job really, I think, was as a coach. And he was horribly competitive. When I was 10 years old, I played for Frederick and Hooper Realty, and we played against, it was the blue team, and I think actually Robert Harris was the pitcher who's here. I think, were you Harpeth Valley? Where's Robert Harris? Davis Gora, okay. And that day I played shortstop. And about 7 balls went between my legs. The 3 that I did catch, I threw over the first baseman's head. And so my dad was very competitive. And on the way home, we were sitting there, and it was summer, you know, and the windows were down. And Dad hadn't said a word yet, and he looked over at me and said, let me see your glove. So I said, okay. I gave him my glove. He threw it out the window. Now I'm 10 years old, and I'm like, why'd you do that? And he says, you sure as hell didn't need it. But he was rather harsh in his criticism of me. He was, as an athlete, just because he was a perfectionist and wanted me to do it. But let me tell you something that I discovered. My mom, we just moved into St. Paul's. My 4th father passed away about, I don't know how long ago it was now, about 5 months ago, Duke Kennedy. If you knew him, he was an incredible man. He took care of my mom better than anyone ever did. He was amazing. But we moved her, and I found this box, and it was all this memorabilia. And I opened it and went through it. Now, remember, my dad was pretty critical of most of what I did as an athlete. But what I found was this, and if anybody's my era, you'll recognize this. This is what football programs used to look like, okay? And they had the teams, and this is from a game I played in the date's written here, September 1st, 1972. And what it says on the back, I turned it over and looked, and there's these notes on the back. And what it says is score 0-0. Now, I played safety. I wasn't a very good safety, but I played safety. And it said, great defensive game, poor offensive game. He took notes on all these. He goes, Dick played well at safety. There were no completed passes. The subtext of that was, though, Glenncliff never threw the ball once the whole game. But they didn't complete any in my area. But the reason I bring this is, and this is somewhat a message to dads, but I look at the young men in this room, and they're also on the way to be dads. As I went through that box, I found these programs, and I really find that basically what he's saying in here on this note is Dick played well at safety, there were no completed passes, and he made a few tackles. But the problem was, I could have used that good job 40 years ago. I could have used him saying that 40 years ago. That's when I needed it. It's good to me now, but I really could have used that pat on the back then. Now, I don't mean to be somber about anything, but the myth of being dad. This myth of being dad is an incredible job that you take on, an incredible role. And I've discovered that father is the person who loves you like a father. Loving does not require being the biological dad, believe me, because the person that I called dad was my stepfather, but he was my dad. Nor does it require being easy on the son. It means understanding the humanity of the son, which means the son will fall off his bike. He will make a wrong decision. He will crumble under pressure, but he will also soar, and he will love that soaring. But recognize that it is his soaring, his defeating his dragon, and just grin at the need within both of you to say, I did that. I mean, I spent my whole life looking for a father and a father figure to give me the blessing to find peace in a strange, fearful world we all live in. Now, what I have now is kind of interesting. I have 2 grandkids. I've never been blessed with a son, but I have 2 grandkids. And one is this 4-year-old demon warrior. He's frightening. His eyes terrify me. But when he walks in the door at my house, he runs up to me with a hug without fear or shame. It's just a pure, you are my grandpa, Poppy. And just hugs, and I don't know what to do. I just grab him and go get him a chocolate milk, and I celebrate. But you know what? Somewhere along the way, I realized that hugs is what we need. Somewhere, though, along the way, we sons stopped giving that hug. We men stopped giving that hug. But I, in all honesty, truly have never stopped needing that hug. I've never been blessed with a son. I've come to realize that is why the sons I care for, the sons that you fathers send to me, the sons that you risk sending to us, I've come to realize that you fathers allow when you get them to come here, that is why my love for them is so deep. They're not really my students and they're not my sons. They stand somewhere in between the two. And that is why when funerals do happen, when I go to those funerals and I look at those boys, and some of them, they have such a look of lost in their eyes. Sometimes you look at them and they're like the look of lost sheep. None of us, when we go to those funerals, know what people need. But when I look at those young men, I try to feel and I try to know. I try to be as fatherly as I can. But last year, I had the coolest lesson given to me at one of the funerals. Realize my dad told me, never let anybody see you cry. That's what my dad told me. Never let anybody see you cry, and I never did. In fact, when my stepdad passed away when I was 17, I didn't cry. It took me 7 years. My sister made me go to his gravesite 7 years later because I refused to go. And it took me going. My sister, in her innocence, just felt the need. She had to take a bag of M&Ms and a Dr. Pepper to the gravesite. So I said, okay, let's go. And the minute I stood there 7 years later was the first time I'd allowed myself to weep. And I realized I was wrong, but that was part of what I'd been taught was to be a man. But at this funeral I was talking about last summer, when so many of our boys were hurting so bad, I tried to be so strong. I tried to shake the hand. I tried to hold those that were weeping. But suddenly, right before the service began, I broke and I wept. And what happened was 3 seniors took hold of me. And they gave me that hug that I needed. I was trying to take care of the scared, the broken, the hurt, yet they had to catch me. And that is why fathers and sons must realize that a hierarchy can be flexible. Sometimes the shepherd needs to be comforted in his own fears and pain. Now, sometimes we as sons and fathers just need to say, hey, come and walk beside me. Don't walk in front of me. Don't walk behind me. Walk beside me. I mean, do you know your dad? And do you know your son? Walk beside me, my father. Walk beside me, my son. Truly, be present in the moment with your son. Be present in the moment with your father. They will not always be there. My little brother fought my stepdad forever. He fought him. He would be bad just to be noticed. But then suddenly, when my brother was 12 years old, his dad, my dad, passed away. So that later my brother was waiting for to be good never came. So as sons, celebrate, be with, know, and love that father. Because for my brother, there was no later. We have the sense as sons we must tread in the steps of the Father, but those are not the only steps we can choose. My belief is that hand in hand, every mountain and hill shall be made low, because the mountain is never as strong as the strength of real love. That interesting command from Athena, go find your father. Go out and find the greatness in you, sons, by learning of the greatness of your dad. For the sake of finding out, as Athena sent Odysseus out to find out the greatness that is in you. Go find that hero father, but remember that hero is human. He is strong, but he is human enough to not be perfect, and allow your father that. Being a teacher so long, I've watched dads suffer. I've watched dads cry in my office. I've watched dads be proud. I've watched dads worry about their sons. Understand something, sons. A father figure would rather the nail go into their own palm on a cross of a trial if it saved 1 second of pain for the son. But dads know that each of those nails that we as sons suffer make us grow to be the next father. The nail lets us understand our own son's nail in the palm. You must know pain to understand the pain the son will feel. I think about the blind man asking Jesus to give him sight. Give me sight, let me see. Well, at times we are each one of us blind to a tear about to fall to those most close to us. A tear held back so not to trouble. A fear not spoken out of shame. A story not told out of a fear of not being listened to. Maybe my dad is too busy. Maybe my son would not understand. Ask to be able to see again through the walls we put around us. We want to know your real son. Want to know your real father. Look past the roles that men play. Don't be the shepherd who loses sight of his sheep. Don't be the son who only demands and expects of the father. Remember the expression, give and love without pay. Now, the hardest part for me to speak about, the topic of one level, is letting go of the son's hands. First, as fathers, you held their hands tightly as they rose from the floor. You held them so carefully as they took those first steps. You held the back of the bike so carefully till they pedaled so hard you could hold no longer. Kids do fall. Kids do crash those bikes. Your son's youth is a constant practice of letting go of that little hand. So that is the hand of your son and all that that stands for. But one day we all face those trials alone. And we sons come home to tell tales of brave conquests and battles. Listen, I lied to my father so many times while telling him the truth, because I was afraid to tell him in words the truth. I would talk of great things I had done at practice, though I had never done them. I told him of how the coach had said, son, you are a great player, when they never said it. And my dad always, I understand now, pretended to believe. And I understood now that what he understood was what wasn't said, is I need you to say it as well. Listen, I got to go to Colorado when I was 17 years old. My father allowed me. I graduated from MBA when I was 17. I got to go to Colorado by myself because there was a soccer team out there I wanted to try out for. I knew the coach, Shel Van Hagen, had made great players out of many people, and I wanted that before I played at Vanderbilt. And my mother was like, no, you're not going. But my dad said it's time for him to go. Let him go. And I got there, I worked the whole summer, I stayed at Snow Chase Lodge, but I played for this man who was a great man, Shel Van Hagen. And I made it. But I wanted to come home and tell my dad. But unfortunately for me, when the season ended in Colorado, I hitchhiked to Virginia City, Montana. And I was there for about 4 weeks. And I wasn't the kind of kid to ever call home. I hate to say it. And I was there for about 4 weeks, and suddenly something in my heart just said, go back to Aspen. My family thought I was still there. Something in my heart said, go back to Aspen. So I went back to Snow Chase Lodge, the place where I had been staying. That night, all my buddies were still there. We talked and laughed, etc., all night long. But the next morning, 6 o'clock, I was awakened by a shake. And the phone call had come. Your dad is gone. So I never got to go back and say, hey, I made that team, Dad. Hey, you know what? I got jobs on my own, Dad. I did it. I never got to say that. But I feel in my heart that he's above and he sees. The point is that my tie to my dad was not by blood. It seems like in blood you would know that something's, I have to go back to Aspen. But you know what? God had sent me the message about the man that I love the most as father. And so I came back to celebrate. All right, now, I'm close. At the opening of the Odyssey, Telemachus sits sadly weeping and waiting. Odysseus' father has been called to fight when he was just a baby. Telemachus had spent 20 years in his father's absence. All he had waited for and wanted was to be held and hugged by his father. He needed the strength of that father could give him. And Athena, in her wisdom, comes to Telemachus and says, go find your father. What she knew he wouldn't find the father. But what he would find was what he had within. And what he would find is the stories of the dad and the strength of the dad that sat waiting within the heart of Telemachus. You see, all of us in this room are blessed with the strength and power and the glory of being tremendous. And I truly believe that. But it took Odysseus coming home. It took that moment of walking into Eumaeus' hut and seeing his son, a son who had loved him and missed him with all his heart and soul, and feeling the powerful human hug when Telemachus recognizes his son, and they hold each other and they hug each other with 20 years of love. And then they stand together side by side, and they defeated those who stood with no one. And they both were proud and pleased and shone as one in the glow of Athena's light. So in closing, we as men were born to conquer. We're in a world of trials and tests, but we are in a world where the right man will be in our life as father. And that father or father figure must allow himself to reveal his humanity from behind our walls. Give the gift of time to your son. Give the gift of time to your father. And sons, the fathers need your love. We need your faith. Now, all of us have the potential to be Lazarus. We all are in our own private tombs. Tombs of expectations. Tombs of an inability to forgive. Tombs of painful memories, tombs of how we define ourselves. But I really believe all of us can rise from those tombs. And we can be reborn, we can recreate ourselves, and we can recreate and deepen the relationships with our sons and with our fathers. I ask you today to be like Lazarus. Leave behind whatever tomb traps you from giving everything you are to that son and everything you are to that father. We all are born with a bucket of blessings. Every one of us. God has bestowed upon all of us a bucket of blessings. Today I ask you each to open that bucket with your son and with that father and hand to each that blessing you hold so dearly that each of you cries for. I cry for it every day. God bless you all.
suspect many of you are thinking, as I have been thinking, that I'm glad Dick Klausner teaches the Odyssey in the 9th grade. I'm very glad that he's a colleague, and incidentally, I knew about his forefathers when I asked him this question. But what I really knew is what kind of person he is and what kind of comments he could make. And